The rain fell in relentless sheets, hammering against the windows of Clara Benson's small apartment. The street outside was empty, lit only by the occasional flicker of a malfunctioning street lamp. She sat curled on the sofa, her laptop glowing dimly in the otherwise dark living room, headphones draped around her neck. Outside, the wind groaned through the trees, but she had grown accustomed to the ordinary sounds of a storm, or so she thought. A sudden knock at the balcony door made her freeze. It was soft at first, almost tentative, then a second knock, harder this time, deliberate. Clara's heart leapt into her throat, her breath caught in her chest as she set her laptop aside and cautiously approached the sliding door. Peering through the blinds, she saw a shadowy figure crouched outside, trying to manipulate the lock. "No," she whispered, stepping back. The storm had masked any other sounds outside, leaving only the scrape of the intruder's tools and the quickening thump of her pulse. Her fingers shook as she reached for her phone. She dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The calm voice of the dispatcher barely steadied her nerves. There's someone on my balcony. They're trying to get in." Clara's voice trembled. "Ma'am, stay calm. Officers are on the way. Can you safely move to another room?" Yes, I think so. Please hurry." She heard a sudden crash, a sound of glass splintering, and froze in terror. Her balcony door's lock had given way. The intruder was inside. Clara sprinted to the bathroom, locking the door behind her. Her phone was clutched tightly in her hand, her knuckles white. "Ma'am, are you still there?" The dispatcher's voice called softly. "Yes, he's inside. Please send someone." "I'm dispatching." Static. The line went dead. Clara pressed her phone to her ear repeatedly, redialing, panic clawing at her chest. Each ring was torture, a cruel reminder that help was not coming quickly enough. She could hear footsteps now, deliberate and slow, moving through her apartment. The creak of the hardwood floor echoed like a predator stalking prey. Her eyes darted around the bathroom, looking for something, anything she could use to survive. The small cabinet above the sink held only towels and a hairdryer, but in that moment, even a towel wrapped tightly could serve as a weapon. Her mind raced, trying to recall self-defense techniques she'd half forgotten from a class she'd taken months earlier. The footsteps stopped just outside the bathroom door. Her body pressed against the wall, heart hammering. She could hear him breathing, a low, deliberate sound that made the hair on her arms stand on end. "I know you're there," the voice whispered from the other side of the door. It was calm, chillingly calm, as if he had all the time in the world. "You can't hide forever." Clara's stomach churned. She could barely think, barely breathe. Slowly, carefully, she crept along the wall, listening to his movements. The intruder moved past the door, and she seized the opportunity to slip to the bedroom, locking it behind her. Her phone, lying on the bed, became her lifeline. She tried calling again, desperate for a connection. This time, the line rang through, but no one answered. Another dead end. Desperation clawed at her chest. The storm outside seemed louder now, the wind rattling the windows, the thunder booming like a drum signaling danger. Clara's eyes scanned the room. She had always prided herself on being prepared, but never for this. She spotted the small desk by the window and remembered the heavy paperweight she'd left there. Grabbing it, she held it like a shield. She needed a plan, any plan to survive until help arrived, or until she could create her own escape. A sudden noise made her freeze. A floorboard creaked. He was back. Clara pressed herself against the wall, heart racing, waiting. The door handle rattled. Then a faint whisper. "You called for help. Where is it?" Clara's mind spun. This was someone she knew, or someone who had watched her. The familiarity in his voice was horrifying. She remembered a strange man she'd seen several times around the building's entrance, someone who had always lingered too long, too closely. Her stomach sank as the realization hit. He had been planning this. She backed into the closet, trying to make herself as small and invisible as possible. She could hear him moving methodically through her apartment, checking every room. He paused in the living room, muttering under his breath, then returned to the hallway. Clara's chest rose and fell in shallow, controlled breaths. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out completely. Darkness enveloped her, the storm outside a chaotic roar in her ears. She clutched the paperweight, praying it would be enough. Every creak, every sound was amplified in the pitch-black apartment. Then, silence. A long, tense silence. Clara held her breath, straining to hear anything. The faint click of a lock somewhere downstairs reached her ears, sending a fresh wave of panic through her body. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A text message from an unknown number. "You can't escape. Not tonight." Her blood ran cold. She pressed herself further into the closet, realizing that the intruder wasn't just random. He knew her. He had been studying her life, her habits, and now he had cornered her. She was alone. The police weren't coming. A sudden sharp noise near the bedroom door made her jump. She could hear his footsteps approaching the closet. The door handle rattled again. Clara gripped the paperweight, knuckles white. This was it. Either she fought back or she didn't survive the night. "Clara," the voice whispered again, inches away, almost gentle, almost teasing. "I've been waiting for you." She swallowed hard, heart pounding like a drum in her ears. The storm outside had become a blur. All that existed was the intruder, the locked closet, and the terrifying knowledge that help might never arrive. The doorknob turned. Clara braced herself. And then, silence. Her eyes, straining in the dark, caught the faint outline of the door swinging just a crack. A shadow moved in, deliberate and slow. The night had only just begun. Clara's breath came in shallow, ragged gasps. The shadow outside the closet had stopped moving, but she knew better than to think she was safe. The storm continued its relentless assault on the apartment windows, the rain hammering down as if nature itself was echoing her terror. Every heartbeat pounded in her ears, each second stretching into an eternity. She pressed herself against the back wall of the closet, the paperweight clutched like a lifeline. Her phone buzzed again, a message from the same unknown number. "I see you. You can't hide from me." Panic surged through her. He knew where she was. He had been watching, tracking, planning. A cold, terrifying thought settled over her. This wasn't random. This wasn't a burglary. This was personal. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed. The storm's roar became background noise, replaced by the faint creaks and groans of her apartment. She could hear him moving, methodically, almost like he was searching for her, savoring the fear he was inflicting. Clara tried to steady her trembling hands, pressing the paperweight against her chest, praying the closet door would hold. She remembered the dispatcher's voice, the empty promises of help. Every call she had made had gone unanswered, dropped, or routed elsewhere. The system had failed her. The police were supposed to be her shield, and yet here she was, trapped, alone, with a man who knew everything about her life. Desperate, Clara scanned the closet. There were shelves, boxes of old belongings, maybe something she could use. A heavy coat? A broomstick? Anything to give her a fighting chance. She grabbed a metal hanger, twisting it into a sharp hook. It wasn't much, but it could be enough to fend him off. Suddenly, a sound, soft, deliberate, echoed from the bedroom. Footsteps. He was close. Clara pressed herself further back into the shadows, holding her breath. The intruder's voice drifted toward her, almost casual, almost conversational. "You've been calling for help, but no one is coming. Funny, isn't it?" Clara swallowed hard, the words sinking in like a knife. He wasn't just breaking into her apartment, he was breaking her mind. Every plan she had relied on, every hope that help would arrive, had been shattered. Her thoughts raced. She remembered the strange man she had seen lingering near the lobby weeks ago, the odd glances he had given her in the stairwell. She had dismissed it at the time, but now it was terrifyingly clear. He had been watching her for weeks, learning her habits, studying her movements, and now he was inside, waiting, controlling every second of her life. The bathroom door slammed open. Clara flinched. A shadow moved past her hiding place, and she could hear him rifling through drawers, tossing aside personal items as if searching for something specific. Her stomach twisted. He wasn't looking for valuables. He wanted something else. Power, control, fear. She realized she had to act. Staying hidden wasn't enough. She needed a plan, a way out, or at least a way to survive until someone finally arrived. Creeping silently, Clara edged toward the bedroom door, peering around the frame. The intruder had paused in the living room, his back to her. Slowly she moved, the metal hanger clutched in one hand, ready to strike. She felt her pulse in her throat, her ears ringing. Every nerve screamed at her to stop, to flee, to scream, but she had no choice. The storm's lightning illuminated the living room for a split second. She saw him clearly, a man in his 30s, tall, athletic, his face obscured by a dark hood. But there was something in his posture, a familiarity she couldn't place. Her mind raced. He knew her life, her routines, her fears. Who else could have? A flicker of memory hit her. Her neighbor, a man who had helped her move in months ago, who had been friendly and overly attentive. Could it be him? Her stomach churned at the thought, but there was no time for certainty. Survival came first. Clara quietly backed into the hallway, eyes scanning every corner. She needed a destination, somewhere he couldn't predict. The kitchen, the small utility closet, anything. She grabbed a knife from the counter drawer, a flimsy butter knife, but it was something. She could fight. She had to. Then a sound that made her blood run cold. The apartment's intercom crackled. A voice, his voice, whispered, distorted. "Clara, I know where you are. You can't hide forever." Her hand shook as she pressed herself against the wall, sweat trickling down her temples. He had cameras. He was watching her, every move, every breath under his control, and she was alone. The hours dragged on. Every sound, a dripping faucet, a gust of wind, a floorboard creaking, made her flinch. The storm outside seemed endless, a mirror of her own trapped, escalating panic. She tried calling 911 again, but the line rang endlessly, then disconnected. The helplessness was suffocating. Clara realized she had to create her own advantage. She needed distractions. Looking around, she spotted a small glass vase on the shelf. If she threw it, the noise might divert him. She could then make a run for the utility closet, the one room she had scouted earlier. She waited for the perfect moment. A flash of lightning illuminated the living room. The intruder's shadow stretched across the wall. Clara hurled the vase with all her strength. It shattered against the floor, and he hissed in surprise, turning toward the noise. Clara bolted. She ran toward the utility closet, slamming the door behind her. Her hands trembled violently as she pressed her back against the door. She could hear him outside, muttering angrily, pounding on the door, searching for another entry. Time seemed suspended, minutes or hours. It was impossible to tell. Clara's mind raced, considering every escape plan she had ever imagined. The storm outside mirrored her own inner chaos, thunder crashing, lights flickering, the oppressive weight of isolation pressing down on her chest. Then the whispering started again, faint but unmistakable, from somewhere beyond the door. "You think this is over? I've only just begun." Clara pressed herself to the floor, wishing she could disappear. The knowledge that the police were still not coming, that she was utterly alone, twisted the fear into something deeper, something primal. She had survived storms before, but this was unlike anything she had faced. This was personal. She knew the night was far from over. Somewhere in her apartment he was still moving, stalking, waiting, and she was trapped with only the shadows and the storm as her allies. Clara's hands shook violently as she pressed herself against the wall of the utility closet. Rain pounded relentlessly against the windows, lightning illuminating the room in blinding flashes. Each flash revealed fragments of her apartment: the overturned chair, the shattered glass from the vase she'd thrown, the shadowy hallways where he had been lurking moments before. Her chest heaved as panic threatened to overtake her, but a flicker of determination sparked in her eyes. She could not, would not be a victim tonight. She gripped the metal hanger tightly, twisting it in her hands until it resembled a crude weapon. Every instinct screamed at her, fight or die. The intruder's whispered taunts had grown bolder, coming now not only through the hallway, but from the intercom system he had somehow gained access to. "Clara, you can run, you can hide, but it's pointless," the distorted voice murmured. "I know every corner of your life, every secret, every fear. You're mine tonight." Clara's mind raced. He had studied her, stalked her, planned this, but she had something he didn't: her knowledge of the apartment. Every loose floorboard, every narrow passage, every potential weapon was hers to use. She crept toward the closet door, listening intently. He was moving slowly down the hallway again, muttering under his breath, stopping to check rooms. Every step he took was calculated, predatory. Clara's pulse pounded. She needed a plan. The kitchen. If she could make it there, she might be able to barricade herself or set up a trap. Using the shadows to her advantage, she edged along the wall, silently counting her steps. A flash of lightning revealed his figure in the living room. He hadn't seen her yet. She reached the kitchen, her hands flying to grab a large knife from the drawer. It was small, but it could fend him off if necessary. She set her eyes on the hallway, heart racing, waiting for him to appear. Then another sound, a low click from the intercom. His distorted voice came through again, softer this time, almost coaxing. "You're clever, I'll give you that, but cleverness only delays the inevitable." Clara froze. The intercom. He was everywhere. She realized that the cameras he had installed must be hidden, watching her every move. She had to assume he knew what she was doing at all times, but she refused to give in to despair. Suddenly, the hallway lights flickered and went out completely, plunging the apartment into darkness. Clara's hands tightened around the knife. She remembered the layout, the storage room just a few feet away. If she could lure him there, she might be able to lock him in, but she had to distract him first. She grabbed the vase shard from the floor and hurled it across the hallway. It shattered loudly. He hissed, spinning toward the noise, just as she dashed for the storage room. She slammed the door behind her, twisting the lock. For a moment she allowed herself a breath, thinking she had gained the upper hand. Then she heard him, pounding on the door, whispering her name. "You think you can trap me? This isn't over." Clara pressed herself to the wall, trying to remain silent. Her mind was spinning. Who was he? She thought back to her neighbor, the one who had been overly friendly, who had helped her move in, who had lingered too long, too often. Could it really be him? It made her stomach twist with a sick realization. Someone she once trusted was now trying to destroy her. But there was no time for speculation. Survival was a priority. She needed to find a way out, and fast. She searched the storage room for anything that could help: cleaning supplies, heavy boxes, a chair. She stacked them against the door, creating a barricade. Her hands were slick with sweat, her breaths coming in short gasps. She listened. Every creak, every whisper, every faint shuffle of footsteps outside. The intruder's voice slithered through the small gaps in the door, taunting her. "You're clever, I'll give you that, but cleverness only delays the inevitable." Clara moved quietly, setting small traps with whatever she could find: a bucket balanced precariously on the edge of the door, a broom positioned like a tripwire. She had no weapons of choice, only ingenuity and determination. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the living room. Clara stiffened. He was breaking through something, maybe a window or another door. The storm outside seemed to intensify, as if nature itself conspired with her fear. She had no choice but to confront him if he reached her storage room. She gripped the knife, ready to strike. The door shook violently. His breathing was ragged now, a mix of anger and excitement. Clara's heart hammered in her chest, but she steeled herself. She would not let him control her, would not let him win. And then, a flicker of hope. A neighbor's voice shouted from the hallway outside, calling for help. Mrs. Delgado, an elderly woman who lived next door, had noticed the unusual lights and the storm-battered noise. Clara's heart soared, even as the intruder's pounding on the door grew more frenzied. He screamed now, a terrifying, guttural sound, but Clara didn't flinch. She moved silently, stepping to the side of the storage room, listening. The police sirens finally wailed in the distance. She could feel their approach, a promise of rescue, but she knew this might only give her a few precious seconds. With lightning reflexes, she threw a box at the door as he lunged, striking him off balance. He fell back, cursing, and Clara seized the moment to shove the barricade tighter, pressing her weight against it. Her breaths were short, shallow, but controlled. She had survived the first hours of terror, and now she was fighting back actively, using her mind and courage to stay alive. The pounding outside slowed. The intruder's taunts became frustrated mutters. Clara heard the unmistakable sound of police radio chatter and heavy boots approaching. Relief and adrenaline surged through her. She had made it. But even as the officers entered the apartment and secured the intruder, she knew one undeniable truth. She had survived. But the scars, both visible and invisible, would last far longer. As the storm finally subsided outside, Clara sank to the floor, exhausted but alive. The intruder was taken away, restrained and silent, but she knew the terror wasn't gone entirely. He had been patient, clever, and relentless, and she had barely survived. Her phone buzzed again, another unknown number. Her stomach dropped as she read the message. "Next time, I won't wait." Clara's hand shook as she dropped the phone. She had survived tonight, but the knowledge that someone had watched, studied, and pursued her with obsessive precision left a lingering fear. The fight was over for now, but the shadow of danger had not disappeared. She would need to be vigilant, stronger, and smarter than ever. And even as the police led the intruder away, Clara knew one undeniable truth. Survival wasn't luck. It was instinct, courage, and the refusal to be a victim. The storm had finally passed, leaving the streets slick with rain and reflecting the occasional flickering streetlight. Clara Benson sat on the edge of her bed, shivering, though not from the cold. Her apartment was a scene of chaos, overturned furniture, shattered glass, and the faint smell of wet concrete from the balcony. Her hands still shook, and every nerve in her body was taut with the lingering adrenaline. Outside, the police moved with precision. Officers had cordoned off the building, speaking in calm, clipped tones into radios. The intruder, restrained and silent, was being led away, but Clara couldn't shake the sense of dread that clung to her like a second skin. He had been patient, methodical, and he had studied her life in terrifying detail. She had survived, but at what cost? Detectives began to interview her neighbors. Mrs. Delgado, the elderly woman who had called the police, spoke nervously but clearly, recounting the strange lights and noises she'd observed. Clara listened quietly, her mind replaying every terrifying moment of the night, the pounding footsteps, the whispered threats, the sense of being watched at every turn. Detective Harris, a tall man with tired eyes but a reassuring presence, approached her. "Miss Benson, can you tell us exactly what happened?" Clara's voice shook, but she recounted the night in detail, the initial knock, the balcony intrusion, the failed calls to 911, and the hours she had spent hiding, fighting, and surviving. She spoke of the messages, the whispered threats, and the intercom system he had manipulated to stalk her even within her own apartment. Detective Harris nodded, taking notes. "You did everything right under impossible circumstances. It's not your fault the response was delayed." Clara wanted to believe him, but the memory of each unanswered call gnawed at her. The dispatcher's voice, the promises of help that had never materialized. It was a bitter truth she would not easily forget. Meanwhile, forensic teams combed through the apartment, photographing evidence and taking samples. They discovered hidden cameras, tracking devices, and a notebook filled with detailed observations about Clara's routines, her work schedule, even her friends and family. The intruder's obsession was meticulously documented, revealing months of planning. He had not acted impulsively, he had prepared for this moment with chilling precision. Hours later, Clara finally allowed herself a brief rest, leaning against the door of her bedroom. She could hear the murmurs of the police outside, the shuffle of evidence bags and radios. For the first time since the night began, she felt a small flicker of relief. She had survived, she had endured, and now he was being taken into custody. But as the adrenaline faded, another layer of fear settled over her. Weeks of obsession and planning were not easily extinguished. Even in a secured holding cell, the intruder had already left a mark on her life, proof that someone could watch, track, and terrorize her without immediate consequence. Her phone buzzed. She instinctively reached for it, heart skipping a beat. The message was simple, chilling, and unmistakable. "Next time, I won't wait." Clara's stomach dropped. Her first instinct was to throw the phone, to reject the message, to deny the reality it implied. But the fear was real. He had planned meticulously, and if the words were any indication, he had not given up. The sense of security she had felt with the police's arrival evaporated instantly. Detective Harris, noticing her expression, asked, "Miss Benson, is everything all right?" Clara hesitated, then nodded slowly, forcing a smile she didn't feel. Yes, I'm fine." But inside she knew the truth. Her life would never be the same. The experience had altered her, reshaped her trust, and left her acutely aware of her own vulnerability. In the following days, Clara began to reclaim her apartment. She repaired broken locks, installed additional security cameras, and took self-defense classes with renewed determination. But she also became more guarded, hyper-aware of her surroundings, questioning anyone who lingered too long or seemed too friendly. The paranoia was exhausting, but it was necessary. Her friends visited cautiously, bringing meals and quiet words of support. They admired her courage, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that every visitor could be another potential observer, another threat. The world felt smaller, the shadows deeper, and the sense of isolation lingered. Months passed, and the intruder remained in custody. The police had gathered enough evidence for multiple charges: stalking, attempted assault, breaking and entering, and harassment. Yet the memory of the night haunted Clara. Every sound in her apartment, every unexpected knock, every phone call that failed to connect with help brought a rush of fear she struggled to quell. One evening, as she unpacked a box in her living room, her phone buzzed again. She froze, eyes wide. Another message from an unknown number. "You can't hide from me forever. I'm still here." Clara's heart pounded, but she forced herself to breathe. She had survived once, she could survive again. She would take every precaution, remain vigilant, and never underestimate the depths of human obsession again. The experience had changed her, shaped her into someone stronger, more aware, and determined to reclaim her life. but the shadow of fear remained, a reminder that evil could strike even in the most ordinary of places, and that sometimes the people you trust most could become the ones who threaten your very survival. She looked out the window at the quiet street, the rain-streaked glass shimmering in the dim light. The night had tested her, had pushed her to the brink, but she had endured. And as she stood there, knife at her side, eyes sharp, she understood one undeniable truth. Survival was not about luck. It was about courage, instincts, and the refusal to surrender to fear. And even as the intruder remained behind bars, Clara knew that vigilance would be her new constant. The battle had been won, but the war for her peace of mind and her sense of security was ongoing. The shadows in the corners of her apartment seemed deeper now, but she met them with steady eyes. The storm had passed, but its echo remained, a reminder that she was stronger than the fear that had once held her captive. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the walls, the knowledge of her survival lingered, and she knew, whatever came next, she would face it with the same determination that had carried her through the longest, darkest night of her life.